What what was the name of the play call on that Hail Mary?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. Brought to you by Gametime, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Oof. Sunday morning was coming down yesterday. Big time. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. That is a tough one to swallow for the Bears. We're going to pick up the pieces a little bit from the Colorado heartbreak. We are going to look at the positive side of things because I found a lot. I took a deep dive within myself and found plenty of positive things from this game. But of course, the result makes you feel like there's something more going on around this athletic department, and we're going to address that part of it too. All coming up on Locked On Baylor. The Hail Mary is what everyone will remember. It is what will be replayed on ESPN for weeks and months and years. And even if this Colorado tenure for Deion Sanders turns out to be a complete disaster, they'll have that. They'll have the win over TCU, and they'll have that. And that will be played forever and ever and ever. And each time, it is going to feel like just a dagger. It is going to feel just like it did last night, Saturday night. And through all of that, here is what Dave Aranda said the play call was for the defense.
We have, it's called Victory Cigar. It's supposed to be that.
Oh, no. Not Victory Cigar. Please, anything but Victory Cigar. That loss hurt so much on Saturday night, and there was like nothing that was going to make it worse, but that made it feel just a little bit worse. And it was called Victory Cigar. And I tell you all the time, Dave is honest to a fault. This is one of the faults right here. I would have been so okay if he took that information with him to the afterlife. Like off the record entirely. Nobody on the team says what that play call is called. But he's honest. He's honest with us. And I can't help but just laugh at it. I can laugh or I can cry. And I'm an ugly crier. So let's just laugh it off. Oh, man. Not Victory Cigar. Not Victory Cigar. Oh, my God. Victory Cigar. That's what it's called. Oh, man. And I did leave out the next part of it, which, because it just gets a little football wonky, but Dave kind of explains what they're going for on the look, probably because he knew after it happened and that I'm going to have to answer this question that it's going to need to take some explaining. And I kind of understood what he was saying and fleshing out Shedeur to one side. And they did. They flushed him out to that side, but you have a guy going one-on-one down that sideline to the side you're pushing him towards. I still don't understand the call on rushing 5 and playing press coverage on a Hail Mary. I don't get it. By the way, it's an unbelievable play by Shedeur. It is a fantastic play. He was bailing them out all night, as he does. Just a real special play from Colorado as well. But it comes down to a play that's called Victory Cigar. A team that's called Victory Cigar by the other team. A play that's called Victory Cigar by the other team. Ah, man, that's tough. That's a tough one. And it was soul crushing not even for like any one reason. Obviously, that play call is what it comes down to on the Hail Mary, and Dave Aranda took ownership of that. But the way I was melting down on the Locked On Baylor postgame Saturday night, the number one postgame show for Baylor football, because it just felt like such a cruel way to end. Sports will do that to you. And it's not on any one player, any one person necessarily, although we can put some blame pie out there. But no matter how you cut it, it hurts. And it's one of those rare games where you sit back and you think, I am literally never going to forget that game for the rest of my life. There will always be something I will remember. Whether I forget the first 59 minutes, whether I forget the fumble in overtime, whether I forget the missed block in the back on a big Colorado touchdown before the end of the first half, whether I missed the fact that they started a drive at the Colorado 26, didn't move forward and missed a field goal that might have put the game away, I will at least remember the Hail Mary. I'll always remember that. And there's few times in sports that you actually have that feeling in the moment. And I think most of us had that last night. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the ramifications of that a little bit later on in the show. But I couldn't believe the play call was Victory Cigar like that. Oh man. Again, I just have to laugh because the guy, he's just trying to be honest with us. And I'm like, please. Don't tell us the name of the play was Victory Cigar. Oh, no. And I wasn't in that press conference. I wasn't in Colorado, but I got to imagine there were some people, whether covering Baylor or in Baylor colors, that just a shudder, a wince when you hear Dave Aranda say that the play call was called Victory Cigar. Oh, man. Oh, like we had taken the knife out of our stomachs after the game. It still hurt, but we were patching up the wound, and then someone punched you in the stomach. That's how it felt, man. Oh, Victory Cigar. No way. Oh, man. Anyway, there were some positives to take from this. And it took me a minute to find those. I had to talk to God Sunday morning, man, and Saturday night. I did. It was like it was real, it was raw. I was like looking inward. It's one of those losses. And that what it feels for you, it does stink more for the players. It truly does. And that's kind of what I'm going to be going over in this next segment, which will be coming up in a flash on Locked On Baylor. But first, NFL fans, of which there are a lot of you, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, just like Josh Cameron and Jamal Bell on Saturday night. And that is America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You don't even have to go far, okay? You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Let me say that again. You're going to get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So start that season with the big return and do that at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
A lot of positives there, but it's hard to see them right now.
This was crushing. This was crushing for everyone involved. For you, the fan, for the coaches, for the players, for the boosters, for the administrators. Everyone. It stunk. There's no other way to slice it. And I had this thought after doing the postgame show, the #1 postgame show for Baylor football. And it was just like, there were some individual errors by players in that game, but it was really tough to just not totally feel for the players. Whatever backlash or response you might have to that, I really felt and feel for those players that were out there. Because all you can really ask, especially after last year, is maximum effort. And you got maximum effort from those guys on Saturday. At the end of the day, we measure programs and we measure, players and coaches and sometimes our happiness by wins and losses. And Baylor did not win. And that will not change because there was a great effort. But in terms of laying out who you can criticize here and where the blame is, I just find it tough to do that to these players, even in the job that I'm in, after a game like that, because they left it all out there on the field. And they answered the bell time and time again towards making plays. And even before I came to, or I really thought about how I felt about the players, in that postgame show on Saturday, I was talking about the two things were play calling for most of the game and the defensive play call and the Hail Mary. I thought those were coaching decisions that sunk Baylor in this game. I was more impressed with that Colorado defense than I thought I was going to be. I was really impressed with the Baylor defense at times, even for a team that gave up 31 in regulation. I thought two of them were fluke touchdowns. That's going to make me sound like a sore loser. I'm not trying to be, because they still happened. You still gave them up. But I say that to say, like, 9 games out of 10, you don't give up those touchdowns. So I think there was a ton to look at in the first 59 minutes of this game and say, that was a positive there. Specifically on the defensive side, I knew this was going to be the first test for Baylor, and I thought they showed not only a good effort, but they showed really good play. Keaton Thomas, wow. That guy reads the game incredibly. Incredibly. He knows the play as it's developing, before it's happening. He was all over the field on Saturday night. And he was so impressive once again. And I think he makes Matt Jones a better player and vice versa. And those guys are at the leader of the tackle board, by the way. They each had 9 solo tackles. Keaton Thomas had 2 sacks. Matt Jones had a sack and a tackle for loss. Keaton Thomas had 3 tackles for loss. They were living in the backfield. This Baylor defense had 12 tackles for loss, 12 of them, and 8 sacks. And for those of you who watched the game, you're like, it could have been more. Dave Aranda said we could have doubled that. They missed some tackles in the backfield. There was 1 or 2 times I thought guys were going for a play rather than a tackle. And still, it was a monstrous performance by the Baylor defense at times. Keaton Thomas was incredible. And one guy who I just didn't expect a lot from coming into this year was Steve Linton. He had 3 sacks last year. They were all against Baylor and the worst offensive line in the conference. Steve Linton was tremendous on Saturday and has been pretty darn good this whole season. Okay, he had a couple of sacks, a couple of TFLs, and a QB hurry to go with it. Like, he was winning on that edge. I had someone comment it was a CU fan in the post-game comment section asking, like, genuine question, do you think the Baylor defensive line or pass rush is that good, or the CU offensive line that bad? And it might sound like a cop-out, but I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think that's a good Colorado offensive line, but I was impressed with the way Baylor got to the passer and obviously the way they stuffed the run. I thought they were great there too. I thought Trevin May was having the game of his life, man. 3 solo tackles. He was playing with his hair on fire in that game. And I thought you got such great effort, especially from everyone on the defensive line. And, He held them under 100 rushing yards on the game. It doesn't win you the game, but I would say that was a pretty darn good performance. 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, 58 yards lost on the TFLs, 52 yards lost on the sacks. Like that is a glimpse of something. That is showing you that, hey, we're still working to get there. As Dave Aranda said last week, by the way, we're still working to get there and fill in some of those holes. But you've got a real defense here. It's not going to be the number one defense in the Big 12 like it was coming into this week. We knew that was a little misleading, but this is a very good defense, it seems. It could be and should be a very good defense. By the way, Snacks Johnson on the back half of that defense, I thought had a really good game. He gets called for a pass interference and a 4-point play on the first drive from Colorado. But I thought he had some tremendous plays downfield in coverage, and Baylor's coverage was awesome. That doesn't show up a lot in the stats here, but there were some of those sacks that were absolutely coverage sacks, and Shedeur had to pull every trick just to get the ball downfield most of the game. But that's how good he is. And Sawyer Robertson's stat line does not look fantastic. 11 of 21 for 148. But I don't think when the offense was stalling out, it was on the quarterback. I thought there was a bit too much of a commitment to running the ball when it wasn't there, which I think Baylor's been caught with a couple of times this year, both in wins and in losses. But overall, 165 yards rushing. It's not terrible. It's not great. I would have loved to have seen some more from Bryson Washington, but he struggled to get going. He didn't have a rush for more than 4 yards. He goes 10 for 21. Dom Richardson, it looked like he was having a sweet revenge game, which the numbers don't look awesome, 15 for 46, but he gave you some big plays down the stretch on that touchdown drive, especially in the fourth quarter that put you ahead. Obviously, we know how that ended. So I didn't think they established the run, and they kind of were committed to that bit quite a bit. But Sawyer made throws when called upon for those downfield shots. It was so good to see Hal Presley coming back and making a huge play for that touchdown. Monterey Baldwin coming back after a season where he's been pretty quiet, makes an awesome play, a SportsCenter top 10 play for a touchdown catch, like hang it in the Louvre type of catch. And special teams, man. Josh Cameron with almost the punt return of the year, and then Jamal Bell with the kickoff return of the year for a touchdown right after Colorado had tied the game in the second quarter. But you have Jamal Bell go for 100 on that kickoff return. Josh Cameron, 91 yards on punt returns. 91 yards on punt returns for Josh Cameron. Woo! Man, that's as good as we've seen the special teams unit in a long time around here. So were there positives to take from this game? Absolutely, yes. I don't want to forget the first 59 minutes of the game as it pertains to Baylor's season going forward. And there's a lot of season left to be played. It doesn't erase the Hail Mary and the absolute heartbreak, because that's going to be the stuff that we remember. Unless Baylor runs the table the rest of the season, let's be honest, that's the thing we're going to remember. But I have a pit in my stomach for a lot of those players, because I did feel that there was a maximum effort out there, and that's all you can ask for. It's sometimes the way the cookie crumbles. It just shows you how cruel football can be sometimes, and sports can be, that you leave it all out there and you're ready to make a statement and your fans are ready for something to really ride with, and it's kind of ripped from you pretty quickly by some great play on the other side and what I think was a very questionable play call on the defensive side of it. I was overreacting a lot after the game on Saturday night. Let's revisit that and see how I can relax. That's next on Locked On Baylor. okay, so maybe you want to get out there next weekend against BYU and cheer on your Baylor Bears. You want to be in the stadium for it, or you want to see the next road trip. You saw how great it was in Colorado, and you want to be out there next. The only place that I go to buy tickets for these games is Gametime. Okay, it's the only place I trust because of things like all-in pricing. You see the total, what you're going to pay up front. You get no surprise fees at the checkout. You got to turn on that feature, but it is so worth it, man. It's so great. The seat views, panoramic views from your seat before you even hit purchase. I love that. Plus, it's backed by the lowest price guarantee, where Gametime is going to credit you 110% of the difference. And that coveted purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, COLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Still picking up the pieces from getting buffaloed in Boulder. And I was emotional on the postgame. I stand by it, but I was emotional. I believe I started it with the worst loss I've had as a Baylor football fan. And I'm going to stick by that. There have been some other tough ones, but that just felt beaten down. And maybe I'll change my opinion on it in the coming days and weeks. John McClain, noted pro football writer, Pro Football Hall of Famer, I believe, Sports Writing Hall of Fame, something. Baylor alum, said he's been watching the Bears play football since 1960, and that's the worst loss he can remember. Ooh, man, that's a long time. And I heard a lot of people bringing up UNLV 99. That was tough. That really stinks too. That was another play that I think is almost lost media at this point. I think Baylor's tried to really bury that play entirely. They don't want any footage of it out there because that's another one you would see all the time. But that's what we're seeing again last night. And it's going to be in cinematic highlights for Colorado and college football and the Sanders family forever. That's why it hurts. It was such a winnable game. And the reason why it felt it hurt so bad is because we were all ready for a win like that. The fans, the players, the university, the coaches, we were all desperate for a win like that. That was about to happen. Prime time, national TV audience, everyone in the corner of the other team, and beating them on the road when they have moved up their homecoming to play you. And you want to prove that statement, make that statement that you're the better team. And in a lot of areas, they are, but not when it counted. And that's what really, really stings. That's why it hurts so much, because we were ready for a win like that. And it was just ripped away in such a cruel way. I also use the term a curse. I use that. There were some people agreeing, some people disagreeing. I said Baylor sold their soul for the year 2021 and the first day of 2022. Yeah. Look, I'll say this. Obviously, the people around my age, we have lived through the greatest era in Baylor athletics in the last 10, 15 years. It's been pretty great. And I was even yelled at by Pete Souza, who was the play-by-play guy for week 1 on ESPN for Baylor versus Tarleton. And he was like freaking out at me on the Cam show the other day. Was saying like, you're a spoiled brat, man. You don't know how good you've had it with Baylor. I'm willing to admit that. But just like the gut punch after gut punch we have had since such a great 2021 year. It's really stunk. You win the national championship in basketball, and so many schools are never going to be able to touch that. And we will always have that. And since then, it's been 3 straight second round exits and a couple of really painful ones too. Ones that come down to free throws or the biggest comeback in NCAA tournament history, all to lose in overtime, like things like that. Or you've been well under 500 in football since then. You have a year where you go into November with a chance still to win the Big 12 championship. The next season in 2022, you lose 4 in a row. You end up losing to a service academy pretty handily in your rival's home stadium while they go play for the national championship. And then the next year it bottoms out. And oh, by the way, you lost again in the second round in basketball, and you lose a heartbreaker in the Sweet 16 in women's basketball when you're trying to turn that program around. And it's just felt like one after the other. And baseball. Yeah. So one gut punch after the other since that Sugar Bowl win in 2022. So if we still had it pretty good as Baylor fans, all told, the last few years and the last decade, yeah. Yes. But don't blame any Baylor fans for feeling like this is gut punch after gut punch the last 2 years. It has felt like that, like torture at times. And this one hurt especially so because you know that this was not an effort problem. Like, your guys left it all out there and it still didn't go your way. It didn't go their way. That really makes it hurt. That's why football can really hurt. Sports can really hurt. I love Baylor. That's why I do this. And that's why it hurts so much sometimes. And yeah, I'm still mulling around with the idea of, my future children not being involved in sports to avoid this hurt and this clear mental illness that I have. And that some of us sickos really have. So is it a curse? Let's give it some more time. And I hate to bring up TCU once again in here, but I did text Steven Simcox, a good friend and host of Locked on Horned Frogs, and said, man, if you look at every gut punch blow that TCU has gotten the last 2 years since the national championship, we've got it worse. Like the same day, something just as bad, if not worse, happens to us. Every time. It's like this weird my brother's keeper thing, and we won't ever like each other, these two fan bases, but it's almost like we should come together for each other on days like that. It stinks. But I'm not going to lie to you guys, as I close this thing out, Sunday, I did find some hope. And I'm going to talk a lot about that on tomorrow's episode. It is not all doom and gloom. It's one of those, you just have to laugh so you don't cry things right now. That's what it is. And this Big 12 is open. It's weird. What I thought was the second and third best teams in the Big 12 both lost on Saturday. One lost big to the team that you're facing next, BYU, which I kept saying was a winnable game the last few weeks. And I still think it is, but they look a lot better than I think a lot of people thought coming into the season. So we'll start moving in on that game pretty quickly here. I don't want to loom too much over this Colorado game, even with the bump that I'm going to get in views and listens, but I don't want to dwell on it too long. But I just wanted this episode to be a message of, look, that still stunk. That still wasn't acceptable in terms of the result and how the game went, that there's no reason they should have lost that game. It would have taken something pretty dramatic for them to lose, and that's exactly what happened. I don't want to take away from that, but I also don't want this to be like fire everybody, cut everybody after that game from a player standpoint. And I don't want it to sound like there was just nothing positive about that game, because based off last year, the first 59 minutes was a positive. And that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. And whether we might have looked over the baby steps that Baylor needs to take to go from a 3-9 team to a competitive team, because I didn't think they were going to win the Big 12. I didn't think this was the biggest game of the year. And so I think it's worth putting out there that these guys absolutely let it all out there on the field, and that there are positives to take away, but then that one will hurt for a long time for all of us involved. Because for as much as it sucked for you and me, it sucked that much more for the people that poured their whole lives into this, the players and the coaches on that flight home. So we're looking at some more positives tomorrow, and then we're looking ahead to BYU. Be sure to like and subscribe. Drop a comment down in there for what you felt about this game and what your measured takeaway is over a day later. Drop that down in the comment section below. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping videos on YouTube 5 days a week, and then the #1 Baylor football postgame show on Saturdays. And then it will also be dropped, of course, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much, guys. This was a fun week through it all. And I've gotten unbelievable responses on all the videos and the podcast. And it's a week where I am especially grateful for you guys, other than how grateful I am for you every day. So thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll be back to go through it together tomorrow on Locked On Baylor.